That's a real problem down there.
Speaking of Jenny Oles Jr.
Yeah. We were
Jenny
talking
Oles
about you
Jr.
sort
We were
of.
just speaking of your mother,
Yeah.
but it
Kindly.
was affectionately.
Kindly.
Yes.
How is she doing?
Lovely.
Cool.
Down in Florida.
Good. Give her our best, will you, please?
You're it. We're looking for public comment.
Okay. Ready to start here? Good morning. This is the Grand Traverse County Resource Management and Administration Committee of Wednesday, January 12th, 2011. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, but before we do that, I'd like to have a brief moment of silence for the victims of the tragedy in Arizona this last weekend.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk call the roll, please.
Commissioner Gilman.
Present.
Inman.
Here.
Henschel.
Here.
Lemko.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Max Bauer.
Is excused.
Fleece.
Present.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Richardson.
Here. Okay, and first item of business, we have the minutes from December 8th, 2010.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the minutes of December 8th as mailed. Support.
Supported by Fleece. Any discussion? All
I'll
in
be
favor?
abstaining because I wasn't here.
Okay. By roll call, please.
Commissioner Inman.
Yes.
Henschel.
Abstain.
Lemko.
I'm going to stay. I was not here.
Thomas.
Here. Yes, whatever.
Fleece.
Please.
Fleece.
Yes.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman.
Abstain.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, and this is our opportunity for first public comment. And do you want to read the rules on public comment, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. 1. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. 2. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Okay, and next we have, excuse me, is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, move on to the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would approve the agenda as presented with just a notation under notices and announcements. If I could bring up the possibility of having everyone look at their calendar to try to schedule the 2000 work plan.
Do I have a second on that?
Support.
Support by Fleece. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the approval of the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I believe we have no special orders of business. So, which brings us to the consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to suspend business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If Any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. 1, Grand Traverse Conservation District Monthly Report. 2, Housing Liaison Monthly Report and Program Status. 3, Road Commission Monthly Report. 4, Resource Recovery Solid Waste Planning Committee Update. B, approval. 1, grant award mental health services for sobriety court participants, district court. 2, grant agreement with Rotary Cherry for new master plan planning and development.
Okay. Is there any member of the public who would like any item removed from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, is there any member of the board who would like to remove any item on the consent calendar? Gilman?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Support.
Support by Felice. Any further discussion? By roll call, please.
Commissioner Henschel.
Yes.
Lemko.
Here, yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Felice.
Yes.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman.
Yes.
Inman.
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, brings us to our first action item. Put up on my book here, and this would be the request for a service credit purchase by David Bauer, who is an employee of the Department of Public Works. Seaman?
Morning. Jen Seaman, Human Resources Director. This request came through Dave, through MERS. He would like to purchase 2 years of service towards his MERS retirement in the cost of $16,185.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Okay.
I'd like some discussion.
Start with Commissioner Inman.
No, go ahead.
I'll defer to the
Okay,
commissioners and
Ms.
I'll come
Wheelock?
back.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what the advantage to the county to allow this is, because I'm sure that at the overall end, when he retires, there's going to be a cost for us to do this, because we're going to be responsible for his benefit.
Yeah, that's
We
all.
already have a defined defined benefit shortfall in the funding that we have. Why would we want to increase it?
It's all actuarial science. You know, they put this together. We don't know, really. I can't, it's hard for me to answer that.
In terms of what the cost would be.
Exactly. It could cost us less, it could cost us more, it could cost us exactly the same.
So we are gambling.
Well, I don't think you're gambling. I think in all likelihood, it will end up costing you more by allowing him to buy it, assuming what interest rates look like at this time, and assuming that they kind of stay the same and don't, go up greatly where his investment part will go up. I can tell you, at the request of Commissioner Richardson, he's currently funded, if he retired at age 55 with 25 years of service, he has to either attain age 55 with 25 years of service or age 60 with 10 years of service. If he attains age 55 with 25 years of service, under his present situation, he would get a 71.75% of his final average compensation. If this change is made, it will go to 76.75, which is about based on actuarial costs. I mean, if you read that over, it says that he's projected to be making $88,000, when he's 55 years of age. That's based, I think, on a 4% annual increase in pay, which we know isn't, what's happening. So, but that would mean about a $4,000 a year increase in his retirement. And then the other thing I'd like to mention, I believe it's part of the MERS plan that allows for this, but it does require county board approval. There have been 3 that we were able to find that the county board had been requested to consider in the past. 2 of them were Judge Haley and Fred Kiesler. I don't remember the third person. And the county board did approve all 3 of those.
Wow. Mr. Goldman? I'm sorry.
Okay, so this is based, the final numbers are based on an 8% return. Is that how this is calculated?
8% on investments, yes.
8%.
And a 4% average 4% pay increase, I believe.
4.5.
And
Actually,
with,
4.5.
with interest rates hovering at about 1% right now, I mean,
Yeah, right.
the comparison is pretty dramatic, and to guarantee that, it
There's no
seems-
guarantee. Yeah.
Commissioner Solis?
Is this military service related?
No. I don't think so.
I didn't see anything in
I
here
didn't-
that
yeah.
said that, Commissioner. I was wondering that,
Neither
too.
have I.
John, does he need to purchase the 2 years to get his 25 years by age 55?
I guess that was my question, yeah.
Yep, as I recall from my discussions yesterday with the staff, he would get to like 55 years and 7 months with this to meet the 25. He would be 55 years old and 7 months, and he would have 25 years of service.
If I'm reading this right, it says, before the purchase at 55 years old, total service would be 28 years and 7 months. And after the purchase at 55, his total service would be 30 years and 7 months.
Yeah, I apologize. That's what I was told yesterday afternoon, but you're right, that's what this says.
Goldman?
So he's not trying to buy into a 25-year plan, he's just trying to expand his benefits.
He's trying
to make an investment through the county.
Right, this $16,000 he would pay to buy him 2 extra years, which would increase his estimated retirement by about $4,000 a year.
Okay, so he's using the county as an investment tool.
In a sense.
He's using the retirement.
The retirement system.
Retirement
yes.
But we are liable for the difference if that 8% is not realized, is that correct? Is it?
Well, we're liable for the pension, and however,
So
however it turns out, we're still liable for the pension.
So if the pension does not, if the 8% is not realized by the county, then we just start digging into our own pockets in the county to pay for this.
No, I don't believe so. His retirement pay is determined by the final average compensation of 3 years, I think. Yeah, 3 years, final average. So what you do is you take the last 3 years of his compensation with the county, you average it out, and that's his retirement pay. And
But-
what they're saying here on page 27, they're saying that theoretically, he would be earning $88,493.82. And his annual benefit, based on that, that'd be the final compensation over 3 years, would be $63,000. After the purchase, same amount of money, but he'd be getting $67,660. So, in essence, if you do the math there quickly, I don't have a calculator, but it looks to me like it'd take him at least 4 years, based on what we have here, for him to recover his $16,000. And then after that, it's gravy, if you will.
No, I believe I believe it's based on the 8%.
It is. And so what would happen is, we're liable for whatever the final average, the retirement is. We're liable for that. So you are correct, if we do not get 8%, they're estimating we need to get 8% return on this in order to qualify. But on the other side of the coin, they're also basing this retirement on an estimate of him getting a 4.5% average annual increase, which we all know is not at all realistic. So I can't tell you, I know that this 8% is 8%. This 4.5 is probably going to be more like 1.5 or 2 for final average. So the average compensation is going to be less, which means the amount needed will be less. But you're absolutely right, Commissioner. It's unlikely, at least in present terms, that we're going to make the 8% interest. How they balance out, there's no way to tell. But it is a risk. You are right.
Sonny?
Jen, this employee is currently maxed out in his grade, right? And what is his current salary?
Well, he is a sewer and water operator too. I don't know exactly, but I
ballpark?
Yeah, high 30s,
Well,
I
it's a
would guess,
long ways,
but that's a guess.
you know, it's a long ways from $30,000 to $88,000.
Might be higher than
I
that.
believe these numbers that were used to calculate this thing are so skewed because of the anticipated annual increase and the anticipated 8% interest, that there's no possible way that these numbers have any bearing on anything. So, you know, the net result for this guy, when it's all over and done with, might be $1,300. You know, $1,300. Well, then, at that point, it's foolish for him to pay $16,000. And I think, you know, I personally believe these numbers that MERS provided this guy are so far from being real that they've misled this man into spending $17,000 of his money.
That's what I feel.
And I think we do this guy an injustice if we agree to let him pay MERS $16,800 or $185 of his money, because we all know sitting here, there's no possible way he's going to get to a final average compensation of $88,000.
Well, you've basically hit the whole crux of the problem with defined benefit pensions. And I won't be voting for this because I don't see any reason to increase our liability on the defined benefit side. I mean, we're trying to get over that hump where the defined benefit becomes smaller and smaller over time as everybody switches to defined contribution. And again, I honestly don't know whether it'll benefit him or benefit the county, you know, if we did this, you know, 13 or 15 years from now. But it's just not a chance I personally want to take. Is there any more discussion on this?
Well, I think if we have approved 3 in the past, one was Kiesler, who was the other one?
Bob Brown, Fred Kiesler, and Judge Haley.
But they were a
I
long
find it
time ago.
personally pretty hard to say at a request of an employee, no, we're not going to go along with this because we think it's a bad investment, when you've got the judge, the health officer of the county, both of them make substantially more than he does, and then who was the third person?
Bob Brown, who's, I think he was in road patrol.
He's
when it
probation
Okay.
officer now.
Yeah, when it happened.
Why would we say no to an employee that makes much less money?
These were a long time ago, the other ones though, correct?
Judge Haley was in 2003, and he was allowed to purchase 4 years. Bob Brown was in 2000 and purchased 1 year. And Fred Kiesler was in 2005 and purchased 1 year.
Commissioner Inman?
I guess I'm in the same camp that Commissioner Wheelock is in. I mean, if he's making roundsies 38,000 and you get
Could be a little more.
70% of that as a retirement benefit, I don't know where they're coming up with these numbers in this calculation with MERS. I mean, they're not even close. It seems to me we should, as a service to this guy, we should be calling MERS back and saying, listen, we don't understand how you calculated this thing. If he's making 38 and he gets 70% of his average final, how do you come up with 88,000? And does this guy have the correct information to make the right request to the Board of Commissioners?
Well,
First of all, I'd approach it that way.
Well, and generally, I mean, we didn't get involved with this. The employee went to MERS directly.
They went directly to him, right.
Right. I guess my first inclination would be to talk to the employee and then go to MERS if that employee so chooses, but it's his retirement account, and generally, we stay out of, what retirement, what you have invested, where you have your money invested, what accounts.
I think it might be, but of course, this is defined benefit, so he doesn't have a say about where his money's invested.
Right, but.
MERS does. I think if you decide not to do this today, you should do it, or I would suggest you do it with the understanding that he may decide to go back and ask them to redo these projections in a more reasonable way. 3% growth in interest, 4% growth in interest, 2% pay increase, something like that, to see if it's realistic. And then that might give you, what I think that will do is it'll bring the numbers closer. The interest rate goes down, the salary goes down, it might close that gap, and then you could look at it again. But I agree, these are not realistic projections.
Well, this is the same scenario we've been fighting with MERS all along. they've so inflated everything that they've got, it's also put the county in jeopardy in trying to say that we're underfunded because of their calculations. And it's not just an individual, it's the whole concept of the MERS program. I see this as a challenge for all of us to be able to follow and understand. You know, the actuarial is a group of people that try to figure out how they're going to do something in the future, and it may or may not fly, and I've always felt that they've overinflated it for everything. And they're overinflating this also. But I still feel that if an employee comes to us, and we've had past situations where we do it, that we should be willing to support the employee. You know, if I was going to be looking at an investment like this, would I invest it into my retirement fund? Probably. Because, you know, we don't know where the market's going to go or how it's going to be, but this is his retirement. And this is where he has decided that he would like to put his base of his retirement rather than into an individual account or someplace else. And he can't do an IRA because he's already into our program. So this is his only option to be able to put additional money into.
Larry, did you have something? Larry, did you have
Yes. Under the B4, how would he get the 80% of his average final compensation? What, how many years of service would he need for that?
For the 80% max,
Yeah.
this would only take him to, what, 76?
Yeah, I think it's
Max.
30 years.
Yeah.
Yes, go 30 years.
See, I've known several people over the years that have done exactly what he's asking to do, and normally it's associated with military service.
Right.
But I've never known any individual to lose that bought service time. And I think if you look at Fred Kiesler and Judge Haley, certainly I'm sure they investigated. I know Brown would have, you know, a nice retirement out of the Sheriff's Department, plus now he's reemployed. So I think that we should honor Bauer's request. You know, why would we care where he's investing his money?
Right.
And it's an agreement we had when he hired on. If he decides to stay, he can accomplish the same thing because he could stay till what, he's 65?
He can stay. There's no age
There's
limit
no
on when
end,
you
though.
can.
There's no end date.
But to reach the 80%,
I think he'd only be like 57 according to this.
to reach 80%.
57 to
Yeah, but he
58.
could stay
Yeah,
longer.
sure.
See, so you have an obligation regardless, and you can't tell him at 57, when he's gonna get 80%, you gotta leave, you know? It doesn't work that way.
Vilma, Jason?
Does our existing contract have a cost of living adjustment provision in it?
For this employee, yes.
Okay, and so if we have an inflationary cycle that's quite extreme, we wind up, are we obligated to follow that inflationary cycle?
He's in the Teamsters General Union contract, so his cost of living is 1.75 in 2012 and 1.5 in 2013. That's it.
Is any of that adjusted based on inflation?
Are you talking about after
Nope.
retirement, Commissioner?
Well, I'm talking about existing wages. We're talking about whether or not he reaches an $88,000 wage level in 17 years. And with inflation, I'm not entirely uncertain that isn't the possibility. And by the way, Larry is correct. We have done it for other, Commissioner Fleece is correct. We have done this for others, and it seems unfair to not do it for Mr. Bauer. However, at some point, these are the kind of games that have bankrupted municipalities. And when we do look into the future and we look at the, this is why we moved from the defined benefits. This is why we moved to the defined contributions, because then what it is what it is, and it's based on the employee's contributions over the years, and if luck has it, they do well. In this case, I would encourage our employee to take that money and invest it into something else. But I don't think the county should be used as a tool for investment, especially when the county can incur a cost as a result of it.
Any more discussion?
Just one more point. I guess in my tenure, which is a long time. I was a young man when I came on this board. Now I'm an old man. But I don't think we've ever turned down a request to buy years, as long as it was at the cost of the employee, and it was generally to accommodate some sort of retirement plan that they were off by 1 or 2 years and they needed to square things off with their retirement plans. And that this was a way that MERS had to allow them to buy in for up to a couple of years to accomplish that. So, yeah, you're kind of faced with, on one side of the coin, in the overall scheme of matters, is this going to crush us? Probably not, but it may have an effect on us. On the other end, we've never turned an individual down to accommodate, a particular person's retirement plans and his ability to do what MERS does allow. So I would just caution the guy not to walk away thinking if he's buying 2 years, he's going to get this ending compensation, because he's going to be very disappointed that he got some bad numbers.
Any further discussion?
Just one, I'm sorry. I don't want to sound like I'm telling the guy what he can do with his money, but these numbers are so bad. I just hope that even if we approve this today, the guy is going to get back with MERS and confirm numbers based on what is real that he's going to see for pay increases, what is real is in interest returned on the money, because these numbers are so bad on what they project his salary is going to be. There's no possible way. And, based on that, if he's making his decision to spend $17,000 or $16,000 based on getting $67,000 back, and he's only going to get $45,000 back, that's not good.
Okay, by roll call, please.
Commissioner Lundpool.
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Fleece?
Yes.
Whitlock?
Yeah.
Gilman?
No.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
No.
Chairman Richardson?
No, and I believe it passes 5-3.
Correct.
Okay. All right, next we have the agent of record recommendation, also from Jen Seaman.
Yes. You have an overview in your packet for those commissioners that weren't here in 2010. We sent out an RFP for our agent of record for our benefits, and there was a benefit committee formed of myself, Dean Bott, Sally Dreves, all Grand Traverse County employees, and then 3 members of the general public, Kathy Jones, Liz Sayre-King, and Kay Suratelli. Kay subsequently had to drop out after our first meeting due to personal reasons, so it ended up being a benefits committee of 5 that reviewed all 8 proposals that we received in. The summaries in your packet, and from there, from the 8, we decided on top 3 that we would bring in for an interview/presentation round. That round occurred on actually Friday, December 17th, and then the benefits committee met afterwards and had a lot of discussion. We ended up determining it was between 2 finalists, Cadillac Insurance and Great Northern Benefits. Great Northern is our current benefits agent, and what it basically, as you will see in my recommendation, I am recommending, and the benefits committee is also behind this. We were all in agreement with this, to go with Great Northern Benefits for a 1-year agent of record recommendation. The employees have, the BCN, switching to BCN has been a change for them this early in this year, and we have had a lot of issues. I shouldn't say a lot, but we've had quite a bit of issues, some that we thought we would, yet this year. And a lot of those employees will call Great Northern directly and say, can you help me out with this? They have familiarity with our benefits agent, and I think right now, at a time when we switch from Priority to BCN that handles things, that processes bills differently, that has different procedures, that it's important to have an agent of record there that the employees know and understand and can go to for their benefits questions and get them resolved. And so that was what it came down to. Both agents, the top two, did a good job and in the presentation, and that's where it ended at. So I know there'll be questions.
Commissioner Flees?
I'd like to make a motion that we enter into a agreement, one-year agreement with Great Northern Benefits as the agent of record for Grand Traverse County based on the ad hoc committee and HR director's request.
Support?
Herb?
I guess, how long is our contract with Blue Cross?
1 year.
Just a one-year contract? Mm-hmm. Then we're going to have to go out and rebid all this stuff at the end of the year.
Yep.
And we're going to rebid Great Northern Benefits again at the same time.
We actually have to do our life and disability this year as well.
I guess I have a problem at throwing that kind of workload all into one. It's like a perfect storm almost, trying to figure out how to do this. Personally, I'd like to see us extend this contract or give them an option or something to be able to extend this contract just because of the workload possibility that could be thrown in at us in a year from now. Sure, we're testing the waters with Blue Cross but we know what we got already with Great North Benefits, that it's a quality company and they are doing the best work for us that we possibly can. I totally agree we need to have a contract, but I'm not so sure it shouldn't be longer.
And can I?
Larry?
Well, Herb, I'm glad you brought that up. I guess in the history that we've had Great Northern Benefits, I've heard nothing but great things about their service to the county and to their employees. And I just had recently one situation occur with a staff member that approached me and tried to get with administration, and at the moment they were unavailable. So I knew Terry well enough to make a personal phone call, got that person on the phone with Terry. It was a very complex situation, and within an hour, Terry had it handled and resolved. Mm-hmm. And the guy could sleep that night knowing that this big thing that he had to go through was going to be covered during this switch. So I have all the confidence in Great Northern Benefits to be our agent. And when we say we go out for bid, Blue Cross pays, my understanding, Blue Cross, whether if you're Blue Cross or Blue Cross Network, they pay the same commission amount. You don't negotiate your commission amount. They pay the same commission amount to their agent, to the employer's agent of record. It's not a negotiating tool. It's who you trust, who you like, who you think would best serve your clients, your customers, and that's your employees. My preference is to have at least a minimum of a 3-year arrangement for some level of continuity with not only our human resource director and our board and our administration staff, but for the company. And we also have what's called in our policy, for the new commissioners that aren't aware, when we do go out for bid, we have a section in our policy called a local business preference. And that means that if all things are equal or close, if we have a company stationed in town paying taxes to Grand Traverse County and all the other taxing units, and their employees are here and have homes and pay taxes, we should give them preference over other out of area companies that aren't paying taxes and helping us with our budget and everything else, helping us with the schools and the college and the library and everybody else. So that's why we have that in here. We have one local firm doing that. It's not to exclude the qualifications of the other firms, but I think if things are equal, I think we should do the local preference decision as well in terms of the part of the selection of Great Northern Benefits. But my personal feeling is, a minimum of 3 years. on agent of record. We can bid out every year the insurance, I think we should. The insurance for everything we've got, we should be bidding out. But in terms of the agent of record, I think it should be at least a minimum of 3 years.
I had a question, John. And just going back to the one-year agreement, does this, when we rebid the health insurance this summer, can we only deal with Great Northern Benefits for next year, or are you going to be able to take bids from anyone?
You mean if we were to send out an RFP and request bids from
Well,
various agents?
I mean, we're talking about a one-year agreement with Great Northern Benefits for 2011.
Mhm.
That's correct? Basically, they're administering the insurance that they bid us last summer, which they are receiving the commission for, whether we designate them as a benefit agent or not, correct? So, let's say this summer we're going to bid it again. Is it going to be thrown out open to any insurance agent, or will we be dealing just with Great Northern Benefits?
Well, I mean, ideally, the reason for the one-year recommendation, too, was because we do have our life and disability coming up at the end of this year. So it's really not any more work to do it with benefit, healthcare, dental, the life, disability. If we were to do it all, it would be all on the same calendar year going forward for 2012.
I think the answer to your question is, if you approve a 3-year contract with them as agent of record, they would bid out all the insurances for next
Yeah.
year.
But
Yes.
the motion on the table is for 1 year, so that's.
Yes.
But my
If you do
question
it
is based on a 1 year.
If you do it for 1 year, then I think Jen and I believe that we would go back out to and let agents bid the insurance and select an agent of record for next year.
And then if we select that agent to sell us the insurance, they become the agent of record
Correct.
for 2012.
That's right, but what we
Okay.
would probably do at that time is go out for a 3-year bid for, hire the agent of record for at least 3 years, and then they would still bid out the insurance every year, because I agree that we don't want to be in a situation where we're having to bid out agent of record every year. But we do believe that bidding out agent of record next year is a good thing to do.
Okay, so the 1 year is to get basically everything on the same calendar.
Yeah, well, it's not only that, but it's also the fact that the insurance that we just bid out, that they worked very hard on, they get the commission for that this year.
Right.
So, I mean, they're getting the commissions for these insurances this year. It doesn't even make sense then to have a different agent of record that's working this year on this year's insurance. They're being paid for it.
Right.
So so that makes sense to do. So I think we envisioned that we would go out for agent of record again next year, and let different agents bid the insurance package, and then see which one made the most sense. We've also talked about the possibility of changing it up and bidding out the agent of record and paying them directly, and having the premiums come back without the companies paying them, so that we pay them one flat rate for all their service.
Well, that is what happens with Priority, right? Because Priority doesn't.
Well, that is not what happened with Priority. Well, Priority does not bid agent premiums in it the way Blue Cross does, but we put it in it.
All right.
So we had it put in. So we were looking at it a couple different ways next year. And frankly, next year, because of the process that they went through, we might decide that if you do the 1-year thing, we might recommend to you that you just let the 2 top bidders, Cadillac Insurance and GNB, go out and seek insurances and present us with a package. We're also toying with the idea that we should get a self-funded price for health insurance, which we think
Would we still need
Yes.
a benefit agent with a
Absolutely.
self-funded?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We believe strongly we need to have an agent of record.
Larry?
I just still think it's a cleaner deal if we do an agent of record for 3 years and then we'll just bid out all of our insurance benefits annually. I think it's just a cleaner deal.
Well, do you want to make a motion to
Well,
amend?
there's
it?
You have a motion on the floor.
Well, I know, but you could amend it. And then we
would-
can vote on that, and if
He
it
can't
doesn't
amend
pass,
my
we go
motion.
back.
No, I would.
Yeah, actually, he can.
Yeah,
but-
I would.
so-
The only thing I do is ask Commissioner Felice, if you'd be willing to amend his.
I just want to be clear, our recommendation is 1 year. We believe there's a benefit to going out again for agent of record.
All right. Any further discussion? Do we need to reread the motion? Are we clear on the motion?
Could I ask Commissioner Felice, are you willing to amend your motion or not amend your
No.
motion? Okay.
No,
All right.
because I think it's very important. This is staff's recommendation.
Okay, all right.
And we did a lot of talking on it earlier, or late last year. I have to agree with Dennis
Okay.
and Jen on this.
All right.
Roll call?
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Fleece?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Chairman Richardson?
Yes. Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the Civic Center South Authority Agreement. You wanna introduce this, or Dennis, did you want to?
Well, I think Commissioner Fleece.
Yeah, I can. Civic Center South has decided that they would form an authority, and I've been assigned to Civic Center South to sit in their meetings and so forth. The county here, over the years, when they started Civic Center South years ago, they appropriated $50,000, and then they appropriated a second 50, and they've got a really nice park down there for the ones that aren't familiar with it. It's 40 acres, and they've got some additional land. They're just they've been offered to them as a donation acreage, 10 acres first, and then an adjoining or abutting another 10, so an additional 20. But anyway, they decided to form an authority, and they wanted to know if the county would want to be a part of that authority, and so I talked with Dennis and Mr. Cooney, and I thought it was a good idea, but I've had some conversations with other commissioners and with Dennis, and they don't think it'd be such a good idea. And to be truthful with you, the Civic Center South Board, I think, was being kind, offering us this. And if we want to just sit on the board and not have a vote, that's fine with them too. But they've done some wonderful things down there in the Kingsley area, and it's all the $200,000. We appropriated $25,000 for the last 4 years also, so they got roughly $200,000 from the county, and that's for infrastructure only. That's not for operating costs. They've managed to do their own. But it's a heck of a nice park. It's the closest county park to South County would be on Keystone Road, the soccer fields. And other than that, Fife Lake and everybody else has to drive into Traverse City to use a county park. And this authority, you would have, well, they've already signed. The authority will consist of Fife Lake Township, Paradise Township, Mayfield Township, and the village of Kingsley. And they're really waiting on an answer from this board or a recommendation. And I think based on the information I have, probably just a seat on the committee, they certainly want our input, and they want the conversation to go back and forth, so I think just a seat on their non-voting position is fine.
Sonny?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that Grand Traverse County does not participate in the authority of Civic Center
I
South.
second it.
Okay. Sonny?
The discussion is very simply the same as I've had before. We have a Parks and Recreation Commission. All recreational dollars, all recreational liabilities for Grand Traverse County should come through our Parks and Recreation Commission. And, it's very clear in here that if we participate in this authority, we also have to participate in their liabilities. We have no business, as far as I'm concerned, participating in this park in any fashion unless it's approved by our Parks and Recreation Board. We don't participate in any of the 7 parks that Long Lake Township operates. We don't participate in any of the parks that Green Lake Township operates, but yet we're being asked year after year to participate in this park. We have a Parks and Recreation Commission, we have a Parks and Recreation Director, we have a Parks and Recreation Department and budget. All monies to have to do with recreation should come through that Parks and Recreation Commission. And this going around and talking about this park as if it's different than any other community park, whether it be one township or joint townships, is just simply wrong.
Herb and then Larry.
I think it's one of those discussions that we need to have in the future as to how we handle parks throughout Grand Traverse County. Whether or not we start looking with the talks with the city to look at whether or not we should start looking at combining our parks with the city of Traverse City and the county with each of the townships. I think Grand Traverse County has the opportunity to be known as a county of parks. We have lots of acreage in parks, but it is so fragmented that nobody knows about it, and we don't have any single source of promotion to be able to promote all these parks. And I think that that's a real challenge for us as commissioners, that we should sit down and start having that discussion as to whether or not philosophically we believe that all parks should be under one auspices. Building silos, to me, is a challenge. I have a real problem with it, that when people go out and build this silo and says, we're not going to be part of the rest of the organization. We already have a Park and Recreation Authority with Garfield Township and the city of Traverse City. Should we combine all of our parks in that authority? Authorities have the right to tax, I think I'm correct on that. So this offers an opportunity for this authority to go out and tax its people for recreation. We should be providing that opportunity for all of Grand Traverse County to see whether or not people are interested in having themselves taxed to be able to support parks. I also firmly believe that this is just one of those things that we cannot continue to allow. The other question I have is Civic Center a protected name from Grand Traverse County? And by doing this, do we give them the authority to be able to use that name, or should we require them to have to change the name because we already have Civic Center as part of our Parks and Recreation? It's just a question.
Mr. Fleece.
Well, I disagree with Sonny. This commission has not provided any parks or recreation availabilities to South County at all, ever. And that consequently is what led to the formation of a group of townships and the village coming up with Civic Center South. If you look out there, Fife Lake, Paradise, the village, Mayfield, and Grant lay on our southern border, and they don't have any parks down there other than Civic Center South. And they did this on their own. County board, they came to the county board and got some money for infrastructure. But other than that, that park is worth a heck of a lot more than $200,000 by a long shot. And the hours and the dollar donations have far surpassed the county's participation to $200,000. As far as Herb's comments, we wouldn't have that problem down there. Well, it's not a problem. We wouldn't have, in your opinion, this silo down there had this board acted responsibly and gave South County some parks. We have, from a person to drive from Fife Lake or any of those 4 townships in the village I named up here next to Elk Rapids on our northern border, that's a long ways. To go to any of the county parks is a long ways. You're talking a minimum of 15 miles, mostly 20. And I just I'm just surprised at the treatment that South County gets. And Virginia told me when I won this election, she says, you can bet on one thing. That board will not help you with Civic Center South. Well, with the help of, he was the chairman then, Dick Thomas, and the people on the board, they were gracious. And they've appropriated $25,000 a year for the last 4 years and hopefully one more year. And the people down there are really appreciative of that. But you know, Herb, you forget one important thing. Them people pay one hell of a lot of taxes, just like North County does. And what are they getting for their dollar? Nothing. So I disagree with you.
Larry, then Herb.
Well, I guess I have a similar experience. When the district was formed, and I ended up getting Fife Lake Township as part of my county commissioner district, it didn't take me very long to get the message from some of those folks in South County that they felt they were kind of left out of sight, out of mind kind of thing from the Board of Commissioners, and that, you know, all the major projects and all the infrastructure and focus and programming and money and those kinds of things predominantly went into the core population areas, and you know, they just kind of felt that they were left out. You know, given the fact that they did come to us and propose this Civic Center South, and under that arrangement, we agreed that that financially we could not undertake a second Civic Center, that they would be willing to get this thing kicked off and organize it, and share in some of the expenses. We agreed to give them some, as Larry indicated, operating expenses and some annual contributions moving forward to help with the infrastructure. And it is very much appreciative down in South County that we're doing that. And you know, the thing of you guys don't think of us, or you're not helping us out in South County has kind of gone to the sideline, especially when we've contributed to fireworks, and you know, we're matching the community policing officers down there for, you know, for when that program whole thing got started. But you know, it was a gesture on their part. I don't think we should be a member of the authority at this time. However, I would suggest that if, you know, they want to maintain, they're going to have to obviously do some changing in this agreement, but if they want to create their own authority, that's fine. If they would like to have a county commissioner sit as an ex officio or a liaison, I would not have a problem with that. And in fact, if they do want to do that, you know, I would come back and make a recommendation to the board that we assign County Commissioner Larry Fleece as either the ex officio or the liaison if they choose to request one. But for now, I would just leave the agreement alone.
Herb?
Larry, I don't want to give the impression that I don't agree with the Civic Center South. You know, I have to commend the people for their time and energies and be able to put this together. It's great that people can do that. It's great that people grab onto it. And I have to agree. You know, we probably have been neglectful of that particular area for providing recreation. That is not my issue. My issue is that when we have started and we have created this thing, that somehow, some way, they shouldn't be creating an individual silo for themselves and not become part of our Parks and Recreation. It's a travesty that our Parks and Recreation hasn't been able to reach out to them and be willing to bring them into and make them feel comfortable that the services that Grand Traverse County can provide for them are not beneficial to them. This park is a fabulous park. I've been there. I've used it. I have many people that I know use that. They love that park. It's become the draw for the south of the counties for people. They have a lot of pride and joy in that. My only concept is that I have a problem with them becoming a separate authority.
Larry?
Maybe the assumption on my part is wrong, but I've been sitting on that board for 4 years as a voting member. You know, when that's because Virginia sat on it prior to me as a voting member. And my assumption is, and I'm going to support the motion not to go into the authority, but my assumption would be, I don't know that we need any further action, but if we do, because it's Civic Center South Board's opinion that if the county doesn't want to get into the authority, they understand that, and they'd still like us to sit on there, and rather than name Larry Fleece, they'd rather have it county commissioner, the sitting county commissioner in the District 8 down there, or even Larry's district there, be the one that sits on that board and participates, just for the exchange of information, if you will. And I think that's a good idea. Sometimes you're able to help them, sometimes you're not, you know. But
Could I have I had a question about the protection of the name Civic Center. Is that something that we should look into and determine if that's what we really want to them to be able to allow that to happen?
I think what you're asking is whether Civic Center is copyrighted or trademarked in some way, and you know, I don't know for sure that anyone's ever attempted to do that, but my guess is that the term Civic Center is within the public domain, and you know, I'm not seeing where there would be a problem with them using that name anyhow.
Bob, did you have a comment?
I did have another concern, though, and that is that I believe that it would be fine if one of the commissioners acted as a liaison to Civic Center South, or the Parks and Recreation Authority. However, I don't believe that you could sit as an ex officio or any type of officer of that authority because of the incompatible public offices problem. Civic Center South obviously has solicited money from the County Board of Commissioners, and we've approved that in the past, and although it wouldn't be incompatible at its inception, as soon as there's any solicitation of money, that those would become incompatible offices. So.
I was just looking for some clarification. If they're, what I understand is they're asking us if we want to be members of their authority.
Well, yeah, they're minors.
And if we chose to do so, what's the dollar sign, what liability we're talking about?
Well, we don't know, but of course
I do.
Yeah.
Their intent, and maybe the document doesn't spell it out correctly, but their intent was not to have any monetary contribution from here for operating costs. Like down there, they've got it split up, you know, and I'm not sure what formula they use, but they're all in agreement. And the only thing they would ask from the county is, like we have in the past, they may come and ask for an appropriation. But other than that, and that's for infrastructure improvements, but other than that, wouldn't be operating costs, nor would we participate in any of their millages if they decide to do, you know, future millages.
So what we're deciding is either we want to be a liaison or we want to be a voting member of their board, one or the other.
Yeah, and I think I have to agree with Mr. Cooney. Maybe a liaison is probably the best position for the board, and then it doesn't muddy the waters at all, you know.
Jason?
So, okay, from a liability standpoint, if we had if we were participating with this, does the county, as a participant of the board officially, present us with a liability issue? In other words, if somebody gets hurt at Civic Center South, are we part of the suit?
I don't believe so, so long as the appointment is made by the Parks Authority, by those other municipalities, and they could do so based upon a recommendation of this board as to who that person would be. And that person could not be a county commissioner, it'd have to be someone else. I don't know, maybe the Parks Director, for example.
Well, I think Bob just hit my key point. This decision has to be made by the Parks and Recreation Commission. A representative to that board has to be from the Parks and Recreation Commission. This is not a discussion for the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners. We have a Parks and Recreation Department. All discussions about Parks and Recreation issues should come through that department. I'm willing to bet you that this proposal was never even sent to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Okay. I did have
Or
a
the
question.
Parks Director.
I did have a question for Bob. It's part of your memorandum So the authority has the ability to levy a tax with the approval of the electors in the participating municipality. Well, the way I read the agreement, the county is a participating municipality. So does that mean that if we were actually part of the authority, we would, if we had a millage election, that the entire county would be asked to help pay for Civic Center South?
Let me clarify this, because Dennis asked me a question in regard to Commissioner Gilman's question.
Okay.
There's a difference between the county being a member of the authority and signing on to this agreement, okay, because all the municipalities that participate share in the liabilities. They get control and they have authority over what happens with the dollar spent, but they share in all of the liabilities, okay? We would want to contact MMRMA and let them know that, you know, we've taken on this additional liability, okay? And, of course, the county, I'm not expressing any opinion here about that, because the county has liability for everything that we do. Okay, this would be just one more thing, you know, whether it's the pool or the road patrol or whatever, okay? But we do share in the liability. I think what Commissioner Gilman was asking is that if we are not part of the authority, okay, we don't sign this agreement, but if the Parks Authority were to appoint a representative of the county, do we share in liability? I don't believe so. Okay, at least I haven't been able to find any authority that would indicate that just by having a representative of the county appointed by the Parks Authority, that would somehow cause the county to become liable, okay, because we're still not part of the Parks Authority. We're not even making the appointment. They want, and we do that with several of our boards and authorities. We appoint a representative of CMH or a representative of the city, those types of things. So I just want to be clear. If we become part of the Parks Authority liability, if we do not become part of the Parks Authority, then I think you could either have a liaison from the county, which is kind of what we're doing now, okay, and not incur any liability, or the Parks Authority could appoint a representative of the county. They could even base it upon a recommendation of who that person should be made by this board, but it shouldn't be a county commissioner.
Okay.
If you're on the authority, Bob, if we entered the authority, is that what
Under
you're
any
saying? Or the
circumstances.
liaison?
If you're not a part of the Parks Authority, but if they still want, if the Parks Authority still felt it was important to have some representation from the county, then they could make, you know, one of the positions under the Articles of Incorporation, they could make one of the members of their board a representative of the county, either a voting member or ex officio.
But Bob, if I understand you correctly, you are saying that under no circumstances should the Grand Traverse County Commissioner be the liaison to Civic Center South Board.
Correct.
Well,
A liaison or a liaison is fine.
A liaison is fine,
Because
but
they
a
are not
voting
a
member is not.
voting member, okay? Once they become an officer, then you have the incompatible public officers problem.
So then Commissioner Richardson asked about the millage issue, if we were a member.
If we were a member of the authority, then we would have the ability to approve that type of millage.
No, I think my question is, I mean, you have basically, what, three townships plus a village that are forming the authority, plus the county, so you say you have 5 municipalities, so the authority calls a millage election, so people in, you know, Fife Lake and Kingsley and so forth are going to participate in the millage election. Would the county have to participate as well, countywide, because we're a participating
Or
municipality?
if you're a participating authority.
So does that mean, first of all, not only is countywide supporting it, but secondly, does that mean that
One general comment.
people in, for instance, Paradise Township are going to be, if it passed, going to be double taxed, once for the Paradise Township and then once for the county?
Yeah, that's, question goes beyond what, you know, I was prepared to answer
Okay.
today. But my guess is yes.
I mean, okay, I mean, my sense is we're not going to participate in the authority. We'll find out in a minute. Is there any further discussion on this? Do you want to read the motion, just so, it's been a while?
Commissioner Wheelock made the motion. It was seconded by Commissioner Gilman, and the motion was not, Grand Traverse County does not participate with the Civic Center Authority Agreement.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion passed.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think this would be one of those discussions that we have in our plan for the 2011 and 12. If we could put this part of it on the agenda as to where we really want to go with parks and recreation in our community, I think it would be a good agenda item.
I think you're right. And I
We'll get
see
to that.
I see Dennis over there making notes, so.
Got it.
Okay, this brings us to the administrator's update.
For the new commissioners, once a month, I try to give you an update of some of the major things that are going on, and usually the meetings go long, so I'm told to keep it brief. So if you need expansion on it, you let me know. The first item I wanted to mention is we had recently had our jail inspection. You'll remember last year, for the first time in a long time, we had some deficiencies in our jail inspection. This year, we received 100% compliance. And I want to point out that I think that, according to Bob Hall, the main reason for that was the change that we made to hiring a medical contract operation as opposed to trying to do it in-house. So that was good news, and I think that contract, while it costs us a little bit more, has really reduced the liability to the county by doing so. So that was a good thing. Also, we're going to, in regards to the dams, the new commissioners have expressed a lot of concerns about getting up to speed on the dams. We are working on setting up a meeting where not only the new commissioners, but incumbent commissioners will be invited to come and get an update on that whole process and kind of a history. We're trying to put it together in a reasonable period of time and do that here in the next couple of weeks. In fact, later today, I'm meeting with Todd Collish to get that started, to get it set up. But there's a lot of activity that's going on with that process right now. As most of you know, I'm your member to the implementation team. The implementation team now has roughly $2.3 million collected from various foundations and federal agencies to remove dams. We have another grant of $500,000 in with the Fry Foundation. We met with them about 2 weeks ago. I had a very good meeting, and I'm hopeful that we'll be seeing in February here a grant award from them. In the $300,000 to $500,000 range. That's a guess, but I think we had a very good presentation with them. With that, we will be closing in. Our first priority, which the board approved last year, is to take out the Brown Bridge Dam. There is enough money to do that already. With that Fry Foundation money, there will be very close, if not enough money, to take out the Sabin Dam. Right now, we're using a QBS process on your behalf and the city's behalf, quality-based selection to hire an engineer for the removal, for the design and the bid specs and everything on removal of those dams, including things like keeping sediment control, how technically they would be removed, looking at the hydrology of the whole system, those kinds of things. It would be a very extensive contract. And the way QBS works is, I'll bring you a process here in the next couple of weeks, but basically we would put out, it's more of an RFQ, request for qualifications. You select the firm. This is a system that the state had adopted years ago. It's the system we used in hiring the engineer the first time when we did the study, the feasibility study. And what would happen was engineers would put together teams of engineering firms, fisheries firms, hydrology specialists, and they would come in and make presentations. These would all be public presentations, and again, I'll bring you the process. And then a committee or a group, or potentially, eventually the county board and the city commission, we're working through that, would then decide on hiring the firm to be paid for from these funds for this full design and deconstruction of those two dams. It will at least be Brown Bridge. It may be Sabin. It just depends on how much money is there at the time. So I wanted you to be aware that we are actively in that process of putting together the specs to hire the engineers and the teams that would actually do the designs for these dam removals. Of course, you know the Boardman Dam is obviously the one that's the biggest issue, the most expensive, and also has to deal with the issue of the bridge. Mary Gillis is on the team that's involved in this. She's been actively responding to the RFQs that come in, and, the QBS process, and she's been working on that as well. So there's obviously some very big issues there. So I just wanted you to be aware that process is moving forward, and I expect it's going to start moving more rapidly. On the agendas, I will try to make a note we have a meeting the first Friday of the month at 9 o'clock at the CRA offices, which is a project management team meeting. Anybody can come, and commissioners are welcome to be at that. The implementation team meeting is the third Thursday of the month at 1 o'clock. Project management team is at 9 o'clock. I will send you all notice of those and try to get them on your monthly calendars. If anybody wants to attend those, you're welcome. I attend those in every case.
Where's their offices at?
They're on the corner of, I always get that wrong. It's right on the corner of 22 and
Oh, sure.
front, or,
The old Grandview building.
the old Grandview building. Thank you.
22 and 72.
22 and
Thank you.
72.
Yep. And if you're interested, just give me a call, and I'll make sure we get, all the arrangements there, and the times for you. We're working, Jen's been working on an idea, which I think is really great, to have an employee weather advisory phone number. This is an idea she came up with, and she's worked with IT to get this developed. We had that big snowstorm a couple of weeks ago, and every time we have one, we have to dig out the policy and say, what are we supposed to do? And under that policy, the chairman makes the final decision on whether there's building closures or not. Of course, we made a decision several years, on our advice, of course. We made a decision several years ago. I'm not going to just drop it on you. We pretty much made a decision several years ago. We aren't closing buildings because what's happened in the past is we've closed buildings and then we get grievances from employees that have to work on a 24-hour shift or emergency. So we don't close buildings, but we actually have a policy where employees, if they feel it's unsafe for them to come to work, they can use their leave time, and not show up. But we keep the buildings open. That's been our general guideline. But what Jen's working on is, and it's cost nothing, it's in our regular phone system. There's now a phone number that's being developed, and I want to say it's 9.
We don't know the exact.
Okay, but it's going to be just a regular local phone number that can be called by employees in the morning or any time, and it'll tell you what the status of building, situation is in bad storms or things like that. And it'll be a way for employees to know what their options are at a moment's notice. Sometimes I'll be talking with Jen and the central dispatch and the chairman at 5 in the morning, and by the time a decision is made, it's almost too late for some employees. They're on the road, they're taking a chance to get in. And so we're just trying to do it to provide more information for employees. I think it's a really good idea, and it'll make it a lot easier for employees. Also, in terms of strategic planning, which the chairman is going to talk to you about, or in terms of the work plan for 2011, I'm working with all the departments right now to develop you a list of their major initiatives for 2011. So when you're sitting down looking at yours, you will be able to see what they've got kind of planned out for this year in terms of resources and how they're allocated and what their major goals are. And I'm hoping that will be helpful for you when you sit down and look at your plan for 2011 as well. So all the departments are working on that now, and I'll have that to you, I hope, by early next week. I'm starting to write so small that I can't see it anymore. We are at the initial stages of being involved in a project that evidently has been going on in Acme Township for a couple of months now, where the Department of, where MEDC, the Michigan the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and the State Department of Agriculture is working with a local firm and trying to put together some abatement programs to increase cherry processing, and looking to add something on the order of 60 jobs. Wanted you to be aware of it. We're coming in late in the game. This is something that's been worked with Acme Township, and so we're getting involved in it now. Commissioner Richardson, you'll certainly be brought up to speed here in the next few days. Right now, we're gathering information about it because we've been brought in at this point in time. And it's just a project that you may see before you, but if you hear about it, wanted you to be aware we're looking at it. We're particularly concerned on getting an appropriate business plan for them. If they're looking for abatements, I guess I'll tell you what our staff's position has been. Our staff's position is, there's no reason to just hand out abatements or to hand out 15-year abatements if the business plan says they only need 2. We need to see kind of how this package is being put together before we get into recommending to the board some kind of an action on this. And we're working closely with Acme Township on it as well. So, and there are a couple of ways that abatements can be approved just by the township without any input from the county. And then there's this new Ag Renaissance Zone, which would require county involvement. And so we're just gathering information right now. We don't have it all yet. That's why we haven't reported it to you, but we will be reporting it soon, and you'll be hearing about it in EDC, I'm guessing probably this Thursday. You have a meeting?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah. So they have meetings. I know they had meetings yesterday afternoon. They have more meetings with the company today, and I expect that they'll be bringing something forth for you to consider. But I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that to this point, evidently, no one is really asking for a business plan from them or asking for them to determine, to make a decision based on need. And we've kind of changed that process and slowed it down and said, we need to see some need demonstrated before we're going to move this thing forward. So I wanted you to know about that.
Jason?
For just a comment on the abatement thing, if we're offering abatements to help a cherry processing operation in our county, aren't there other cherry processing operations in our county that we're competing against? In that, just something to take to that.
That's very.
It doesn't seem appropriate.
No, it's very legitimate. And those are the kinds of things that the Economic Development Corporation and the board weighs on a regular basis. I guess in an ideal situation, this would be some kind of a niche market that no one else is servicing. But I think that it is important that Economic Development Corporation and the people involved looked at how this project could impact other manufacturers in the community. And what I think you want to try to avoid is two manufacturers providing the same kind of service on equal basis and giving an advantage to one over the other. I don't think you ever want to be in that situation. So it's very important we look at those things. And I know that that's something that the staff is going to be looking at as part of that.
As much knowledge as I know about this, and it's been really recent, this is a very complicated question that would be coming forward to Acme Township and potentially Grand Traverse County, because it does involve an expansion of a current plant. It involves a federally mandated agreement by farmers to limit the amount of cherry crop, in order to keep the pricing of cherries to a certain level in order for them to stay in the business. And it all is predicated on the demand for the product, not only nationally but internationally. And this particular company wants to take what would be deemed a secondary market, that's the drying of the product and the juices that you would get from it, that a normal plant probably would not process, and try to distribute it state, nationally, and internationally. So that involves the business plan. It involves question of demand for the product. It also brings in the question about number of employees and what they would be paid, and would these individuals be, based on that pay structure, are they going to be minimum wage? Are they going to be living in Grand Traverse County because it's on the border of Antrim and Grand Traverse?
There are just a myriad of questions that we cannot answer for you at this point in time.
This is going to be something that we're going to ask for some more information on this thing, so we can make an intelligent decision on this thing. And you're correct there is another plant in an adjacent county that does what they want to do that is going to be brought up in terms of your concern. So this is not going to be an easy process to get through, is all I'm just trying to indicate to you.
Jason?
And then in terms of projections, I mean, in the history of the MEDC in this state, they have never in their entire existence made a projection. They have yet to do it. And it's interesting that, we want to become involved in the process, in the business process, or the government wants to become involved in the business process. And just, I think taking it forward, less involvement is better, ultimately, because what happens is they take away from one segment of the population to give it to the other. It's simply, at a business level, it's still just redistributive. So, and anyway, that's my commentary on it anyway.
Next issue, Commissioner Richardson asked me about the fuel tanks at the Civic Center, and I have an answer for that. Actually, the new regulations, we have fuel tanks that are near the walking path that are above
Talking
ground.
about overhead fuel tanks.
Overhead fuel tanks that the Facilities Department use. Actually, the regulations require them to be above ground. They can no longer be underground. And so they have to be above ground. And so these are designed and meet the specifications of the DEQ and EPA regulations. They also have to be locked at all times, which they are. But I've talked with Danny and I've talked with Janice at the facilities, and I thought that was the case. We just did those several years ago, and they're designed to meet all the specifications, but they have to be above ground, not underground.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that changed several years ago.
The next thing is going to come to you next week, but I want to give you a heads up on it. You approved doing a refinancing of the bonds for the wastewater treatment plant, the $32 million plant. We received a letter from John Axe, our financial advisor, who's indicating with the interest rates what they are right now, he believes it might make sense to delay a month. In the last 3 weeks, interest rates have risen. And he's recommending that we wait a month on the sale of these bonds because he's hoping that we'll get a better interest rate. Originally, I told you it was going to be about $1,999,000 in savings. Last time I brought you a projection, it was $1,560,000, I think. Well, evidently, interest rates have gone down. There's still a savings, but it's not so significant. So Bill Rokas will be here next week to explain that to you and ask you to hold off until February in hopes that the interest rates improve. So I wanted to give you a heads up on that. Also had a meeting this week with representatives of the Parks Board. The Parks Board is exploring the idea of instituting what I call the Carver model in terms of management of the staff. Herb, you had a different name for it.
Board governance.
Board governance. And this is a principle where goals and objectives, directives are set to the department head or to the administrator for a period of a year. Some limitations are put on, restrictions are put on things that he or she can do, but then basically it's up to them to make the decision on how things happen to achieve the goals that the commission set. This is a system that's being used at NMC with Tim Nelson, and it's a system that's used at Community Mental Health.
And Oriana.
And Oriana, that's right, and at Community Mental Health with Greg Paffhouse. I think there's some complications to implementing it here on a parks level without considering it county-wide or on my level, but we met with the committee, Jason was there, we talked it through, we think there's a way that it can be done, but I cautioned the Parks Board members that were present that it can only be done with a great deal of trust and mutual respect. It can only be done with a lot of education as to what gets put into those goals and what gets put into those restrictions. In other words, you can't tell an administrator, this is what you have to, these are the goals you have to achieve, but then put restrictions on them that make it impossible to. And it has to be done with a lot of understanding that it's basically hands-off in terms of the daily operation of the department. I've questioned, quite frankly, whether the Parks Board really understands that that's the level of which they have to kind of relinquish control. And, but I told them I would work with them in any way that I could, but I wanted you to be aware of it because it could impact you, because the difficulty here is when they set their policies and their limitations, if they don't get those policies approved and blessed by you, we have a situation where the employee works for me, and I take direction from you. He works for the Parks Board and has to implement their needs, but if the Parks Board and the County Board aren't in agreement on what those things are, you know, he's challenged in a way that he will not be successful. So I want you to be aware we're talking about that.
You know, Dennis, I have a lot of concern regarding this model and how it fits into local government. We've had, I think, a very successful and interactive model here at the county. It's been very flexible. We have the ability to have department heads come in and make presentations to the County Board of Commissioners, to have a dialogue back and forth in the committee system, to come up with mutual understanding and agreements about moving forward in terms of process. We've delegated that process not only to the department head, but to the various boards and commissions that we have been assigned to, that we have assigned them to. You know, the Carver model, as I understand it, is more of a structured, formal, corporate structure, business kind of entity where you have a board of directors that sets everything, and then they go home. They have no interaction with staff. They hire a CEO. The CEO is now responsible for implementing the directives of the board of directors. And the board of directors does not have any interaction at all with any department heads or employees within the county in terms of any discussion. And I know that we have an understanding and agreement with our county administrator in his contract that the board does not tell employees what to do, and we do not micromanage staff or the department heads. He is responsible to do that function. He hires them, he fires them, he disciplines them. We have one point person that's in charge in this county. We can't have 9 or 10. But we also have a model here where the department heads are willing and feel comfortable coming in during these committee meetings that we have structured at the county and feel free to communicate to us as a board of directors and to the administrator about how they feel about what's going on in their particular department, how things are working, or what things they'd like to recommend, and to let us give consideration of these things. And we have a fair debate. It's a democratic process. It's an open process. And this Carver model is not an open process at all. You basically tell someone to do something, and that's the end. There's no more communication with the board of directors. The board of directors are the board of commissioners. And I think that how we have structured this thing has worked really well. I've never seen a problem in how we've got this thing formatted since I've been on the board of commissioners. And you know, I have a real concern. I know one particular commissioner is very strong in this model, but I have a concern about mixed messaging between the Board of Commissioners, the administrator that we've asked to run the departments and the day-to-day activity, and the transference of responsibilities to a certain level to boards and commissions that we've assigned throughout the community that report to us, and having mixed structures within those boards and commissions that do not allow them to engage the board directors, the board of commissioners. So I think we're going to, under this Carver thing, I mean, yeah, it was good to bring up. It might have some pluses in terms of how it's structured, but in terms of mixing it around the county and having a mixed structure that ultimately does come back to us, I think we ought to have an agreement. This is how we're going to work the Board of Commissioners. This is how we're going to work the county and the board and committees within the county. And I think the present model that we have works well. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Next item is DK Security has done a review of this building, the security in this building, and they've made a number of recommendations on improvements. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be bringing to you a series of recommendations for improvements to improve security. Most of them are low impact, low cost kind of things. And so I just wanted you to be aware. I think they did a good job on it. We've already implemented one very small one. You know, the idea that we have one access point to this building, one public access point. It's the front doors, the glass doors. But while we were talking to them, we realized that the brown door next to it, that when people walk up the stairs, we've been leaving that open. And, you know, no one can see who's entering or leaving by that door. So we've closed that door now. You'll see everybody walks through the glass door and then can go up the stairs if they want the exercise to go up the stairs. But there are a number of other recommendations, some of which cost some money that we may have to, like, if you're interested in them, we may have to budget for next year. But I wanted you to know, I think they did a real nice job. We met with them, Danny and Katie and I met with them last week, and Dean Bott. And we'll be summarizing them, providing you with the report and a series of recommendations that we might think about implementing.
Can I have a question on that? Now, who's doing that assessment, if I can understand?
I can't remember Jim's last name, but the head of DK Security, this was a year ago, you asked if they would do this, and what happened was one of their principals who was going to do the security review became gravely ill in the middle of it, and she was off for several months.
Yeah, 'cause I do remember a conversation about, you know, should we have someone here at night, you know, especially in the winter for the homeless, and, you know, they're trying to catch a place to sleep where it's warm, and this is kind of an open building, you know, if you go downstate to other governmental type of buildings, there's security there. You got to clear everything out of your pockets. You got to, you know, if you have an appointment with somebody, they got to verify that you have the appointment. I don't want to get into that.
Right.
But in terms of access to doors and controls to who has keys and who doesn't have keys, and who has the authority to come in the evening and who doesn't have the evening during odd hours or weekends, and are all the doors restricted in terms of the cards and who has access to it, or general access to everything, I don't know if we're ever going to get to the point where we need additional security parameters within our buildings, courthouse, those kinds of things. You know, I don't know I don't even know if we have cameras in our courtrooms. I mean, I don't know, but
the court buildings are in good shape and are well secured. These recommendations include a whole variety of things, some more panic buttons in this building, some cameras in this building. You know, they recommend, of course, that we have a security guard at this building. But I know that in the past, the county board has not been interested in that, and it's an expensive alternative. So what I'm saying is he's made a number of recommendations. Some are low-impact things that are easy to do, that improve the security, and then, you know, the level, you choose the level depending on what you're willing to spend. But I think we have a plan that, you know, he's come up with a good plan that I think we can do some technical things that will significantly improve the security of the building and not do it at a lot of expense. So we'll be presenting that to you. Yep, we'll do that. Also wanted to tell you, I'm working on hiring of the Public Works Manager. Chris Boudet came to sewer and water meeting in December. You know, Chris, for the new ones, is in the National Guard and has been off, I think, 3 years in the last 4 or 5, and he's the DPW manager. He's still gone in service and was supposed to be back a year ago, was extended, and now is supposed to be back in April. But when he came to the meeting, he could not guarantee us or tell us that he's been given orders to return. Ross Childs, who's acting as the interim, has said he doesn't want to work that amount after April. So I recommended to the Sewer and Water Committee that we look at hiring a director. Chuck Korn is evidently going to be the representative on the Board of Public Works and the head of the Sewer and Water Committee, and so Jen put together the advertisement for hiring a Public Works Director, whether interim or full-time, and we checked with Chuck Horn to make sure that was okay, and he said it was, and then when he read the ad, he called us on Monday and said, well, wait a minute, we want a contract with somebody to do this, we don't want to hire a department head. So I've talked with a couple of supervisors in Ross. They are meeting right now. They just started their meeting, and I've asked them to clarify what it is that they want. For those that were here, in my evaluation, I was criticized for not hiring a full-time director in that department. I haven't hired a full-time director in that department because the people who are paying the bills, the townships, have said they don't want a full-time director. They wanted a part-time director, and they wanted to use Ross Childs. Well, we're back in the same situation again. I'm recommending they hire somebody, and they may be saying, we don't want to hire somebody, we want a contract with somebody. So if they say that, I'm going to come back and ask you, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to hire somebody, or do you want me to let them make the decision on how they manage that operation? I'll give you my recommendation, and I'm going to need some advice from you on that. Now, having said that, I talked with Rob Manigold, the supervisor from Peninsula, yesterday, and I talked with Ross Childs, and I suggested, let us go forward with this process. Let us get applicants. We'll give you a chance to see who the applicants are. Maybe there's an applicant there that you want to contract with. If you're not satisfied, or maybe you'll decide we've got somebody good and we're going to hire them. If they decide that it's not somebody that they're interested in and they want to contract it out, I'll bring it back to talk to you. So they could kind of look at it both ways, but I think at least give me a chance to kind of see what kind of people are out there that might be able to fill this position. I think we've gone too long without someone full-time to give direction to the operation.
I think you know how I feel about this, that we really need a full-time director there. But shouldn't it be the Board of Public Works that's deciding this rather than the Sewer and Water Committee?
Well, it would eventually go to the Board of Public Works, but, their process is everything is recommended from the Water and Sewer Committee to the Board of Public Works. So that's kind of how it goes.
I understand that's how it's been done, but I'm not sure that's how it should be done.
Well, and remember that the Board of Public Works, the Water and Sewer Committee, and the County Board all passed a resolution 6-7 years ago that says that person's under my direction and that, it's my responsibility to hire and fire. So, in the past, this board, at least what you've expressed to me publicly and otherwise, is that they're paying the bills for the most part, and they should have a lot of say into how we manage that. To this point in time, they have not wanted to go with a full-time director, but I do believe we need somebody full-time in there. The difficulty is this, and as almost always, it's never as simple as it sounds. We have a responsibility to bring Chris back when he's done with his service into a role that is similar or the same, and at the same rate of pay that he would be getting otherwise. And so we have this commitment to him, which we have always followed through on with our returning veterans. And we will with Chris as well. But we don't, in this crucial department where we have so many issues before us, it's just, I don't think we can do it. Ross has done a great job, but I don't think we can do it with a part-time person. I think we need somebody there who can give full-time attention to moving this department forward. And I'm hoping that the township supervisors and the Board of Public Works will agree.
Yeah, in regards to this, I think that in discussion with a lot of different people, they need to bring forward to us the recommendation to increase the size of the Board of Public Works and put all the township supervisors on that and eliminate the G5 and the Sewer and Water Committee. The sooner that's brought before us, the better it's going to be for them to operate. The operation model that they currently have is probably the worst business model I've ever seen. And, we as commissioners are the ones that are going to have to be able to allow that to happen. I think the sooner we can bring that forward and bring that for a vote, the better off that's going to be. And that's going to help this process to be able to help Dennis get some guidance as to where this thing really should be.
And I know they're working on that issue right now.
No, the law, I think, allows us to do it, doesn't it?
No.
No. The
We can't.
law is being considered for amendment right now.
Okay.
But I think that there is a proposal that's being considered by some of the board members that would fall within the size parameter of what we have right now. So there could be something done initially.
Whatever we need to do, we need to do it.
Okay?
But you're not talking about bringing more supervisors in,
Just the current.
just the current,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Herb Lemko and I were on a conference call Monday with the MSU Task Force. This is the Cooperative Extension Reorganization Task Force. And of course, we're set for this year. There's been a lot of change in that, and there will be more change that comes through. But they're looking for a new agreement that we'll probably be getting in the next 2 months for how we will interact with them financially and otherwise in terms of the service they provide in Grand Traverse County. It'll be a basic contract that provides basic services, and then there will be individuals that all counties will have, and then there will be an individual supplemental contract that will be tailored to the needs of the individual counties. But it's pretty clear, I think, Herb, you'd agree, they're saying there's going to be a supplemental cost. Now, all along, we've been told our cost will stay cost neutral.
Right.
But I think the fact will be, from what I heard on Monday, some counties will pay less, some counties will pay the same, and some counties may pay more. We just don't know, but I wanted you to have a heads up on that and know that as soon as we get that, we'll be back talking to you, because it's you who determines the level of service that we have with MSU Extension, and you will control that contract and how much money is spent on it.
I should note, Kalkaska completely defunded away from the MSU extension.
Yeah, I understand that, yep.
That's up for discussion today at 4 o'clock again.
With Kalkaska?
Yeah.
Next thing is, we're working on the Commission on Aging long-term agreement. This will be the 5-year agreement that will coincide with the millage. That agreement was sent to Commission on Aging for their review. They're going to review it here at their next meeting. And once they've reviewed that, and if, pending any changes, then it'll be coming to the county board for approval.
Yeah, you're talking about the senior center network?
This is the senior center agreement between the county and the city, the long-term agreement. I think the city is scheduled to take it up perhaps next week, but in the next couple of weeks. But we're not going to take it up, you're not going to take it up until you get a recommendation from the Commission on Aging. So that's where that's at now. The last thing is just a thing I just wanted to mention to the new commissioners particularly, but all commissioners really. It's so, in trying to keep these meetings short, it's so helpful if you get your agenda over the weekend or whatever, if you have questions about items on the agenda that we can help answer prior to the meeting itself, please feel free to call us. We'd really like to be able to give you the answers so that you can make an intelligent decision at the meeting, as opposed to having to delay a month to get answers to questions. So as you go through the agenda, all of you, if you have questions for departments or for myself or Jen or anybody, call us, let us know, and we'll try to get you answers ahead of time so that you can have that for the meeting. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and we have the youth baseball program now for the new commissioners. If I can just quickly say, this started out as a receive and file of our Parks and Recs director report on the baseball program last summer. And I think it was first put on in November, it was delayed to December, and then it was delayed again to this meeting. So, again, this is a receive and file only. I know many of us have questions about the baseball program. I'm not sure that right now is the time to hash it all out. Larry.
Mr. Chairman, we did receive a letter which we forwarded to all county commissioners from Mark Greiner, who represents the American Legion Post, regarding a meeting they were going to have, I believe, last night, regarding the possibility of interest in looking at the 2011 baseball program for Grand Traverse County. Under the advisement of Bob Cooney, it was his suggestion that, given some of the parameters of the Open Meetings Act and some perceptions that could be taken, that it would be not advisable to send several county commissioners over to a meeting that is closed to the public, could not be posted because it is in a facility that is not readily available and open to the public as a private club. That when we talked to Mr. Greiner on the phone with myself and Dennis, we suggested maybe a better course of action is to set up a joint meeting or schedule a meeting where we can invite their executive committee members in and have a discussion about if they do have interest in looking at managing the program again for Grand Traverse County and under what conditions. We told them that we would get back to them if that was indeed the course we wanted to take in terms of potentially getting a joint meeting together and potentially having inviting the Parks and Rec, County Commission, and their executive committee members together. That was one option that we talked about on the phone. And there is a timetable, as you're aware of, because if there's going to be a decision made or changed, we need to move fairly quickly on this thing. So one of the challenges is, as you know, we were going around and trying to capture dates and times for our 2011 planning date. Katie and I grabbed just about every day that this room was available during the day and in the evening, and there wasn't one day that everyone could make it. So that's one of the challenges that we have. So I suggested at that point in time if I would bring this up at this meeting because it was an unfinished business item. If this board wanted to engage the American Legion on their interest, then we would try to schedule something, probably not likely in this room, but potentially over at the Civic Center, where that availability in terms of the room would open up a whole series of other dates that we could take a look at, hopefully next week at a minimum, that we would be able to try to schedule something and get this question resolved. So I just bring that to your attention that we did have that discussion with Mr. Greiner, and he and his group would like the opportunity to engage, again, the Parks and Rec Commission and the County Board on the question of their ability to run the 2011 baseball program.
Sonny?
Okay.
Well, I guess, I'm a little confused by this. First and foremost, this was a receive and file. This was not an action agenda item. This was strictly a receive and file.
Right.
Again, I'm really confused why we're having this discussion at all, because this is a Parks and Recreation Board decision. This is not our decision, it is theirs. Bob's been very clear about, with their rulings, they are responsible to determine what programs are run by the Parks and Recreation Department for Grand Traverse County. I have had multiple conversations with Mark Greiner also, and it's not a matter of their necessarily wanting involvement. They want to see that a program is available more than the fact that they want it back. I don't think that's necessarily the issue. And, I've received probably a dozen calls in the last 2 weeks, so obviously some news media got out about the fact that we were going to have this discussion. Most of the parents, most of the coaches that I've spoken to were pleased with the program. There's glitches, there's pieces that they didn't like, there's pieces that they did like. But the fact is, 2 years ago, we didn't like the way the American Legion rode the program. We had 20 parents in here telling us that we needed to do something about it. So we did. We took it back, or the Parks and Recreation Department took back the program and operated the program. All right, now, because 13% or something like that of the people that were surveyed aren't happy, are we willing to take it away from Parks and Recreation and give it back to American Legion, or give it to the YMCA, or give it to somebody else? I don't know. I think we need to at least give them an opportunity to operate this program a couple of years and see where it goes to. We've made an investment, we've made a commitment. I think we need to do that. But first and foremost, this is not our decision. This is a Parks and Recreation Board decision. And I'm sure this discussion is going to go on for an extended length of time. And as I mentioned to the chairman earlier, I have to leave at 9:30. I have a crane on site to do some work that I simply have to be there for.
Well, first of all, Jason, I'll get to you in just a second. Could I have a motion to accept the report?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept the report from the 2010 baseball evaluations from Director Jason Jones, Parks and Recreation Director.
Do I have a second on it? Second from Inman. Okay. Jason, and then Larry.
I think we could move forward with accepting the report. I think that in fairness to Sonny, I'd like to make a motion on this particular issue right now.
Well, we have a motion on the floor.
Oh, you have a motion on the floor, so, okay.
Let's move this.
Well, we'll get to you in a second, Larry.
Well, the reason we asked to receive and file to be tabled, and Commissioner Max Bauer certainly has a real interest in this item. But anyway, it was put in our packet, had a couple days to look at it. It's very voluminous, and Jason, I would appreciate, next time you do a report, seeing it, maybe 3 pages, a synopsis of the information that's in here. To take the time to thumb through all this is crazy, in my opinion. But anyway, that's the reason it was delayed. She was gone in December. She's in the hospital today. And so that's the reason it never got to a file position. But what really bothers me is initially when we took the vote, which I was deadpan against, I think we slapped an organization, the American Legion, in the face, this commission did, after 62 years of running a program at no cost to the county. It was sleight of hand because I had no prior knowledge that anything like that was going to happen until that evening. And I hear about that and have heard about it probably on a weekly basis since then. The question I asked then, and I'm going to ask you again, and I'm going to ask Dennis to direct you to do this, is I would like to see the cost incurred by the county to run this program this last year. There's not a mention of the cost in here whatsoever that I saw or that I found. And I guess I don't have, I'm going to vote for the receive and file because it's meaningless at this point to hold it up any further, but I'm in firm agreement of a motion I think Mr. Gilman's going to make, that we have an additional meeting in a week or so, as outlined by Commissioner Inman, and find out what the request of the American Legion is, because I just can't believe that they're asking us to take a look at it. I think Mr. Cooney has indicated in his opinion that, like Commissioner Wheelock said, it's Park and Rec's board's decision. But this board, with 3 members or more, certainly has superintending control. And I'm really ashamed of what happened last year as far as an organization. And I still don't understand when we have some commissioners that are so diligent on not spending any more money, why we would throw an agency out with 62 years. And we were charging them like $10,000 a year. That's crazy, in my opinion. If anything, we should have let them have it for a token $500. They are servicing all the children in this community. I never heard of a child that got turned down that wanted to play baseball and couldn't afford it. American Legion made it happen, and they ran a good program. Thank you.
Well, the budget numbers are up on the screen for commissioners. I think you've seen this in the past.
We can't see it.
And they are not in the packet.
They're not in the packet, you are
They're not in the
correct.
packet.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any questions anyone has for Jason or in regards to the report from last year? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Stay, Jason.
Okay, now Jason, you had a motion. you'd like to make?
And I understand that I know that Larry wants to wait a week. I think that we take it just with a little bit more aggressiveness, and in this way, we somewhat give the American Legion some leverage in dealing with us because I think we have done them wrong after 62 years of good service to the community. I don't think it's appropriate at all that we took the baseball program from them based on 1 year out of 62, that there was some concern. So I moved to abandon the county-run youth baseball program first, and then encourage the American Legion to resume operations. And if I could get a second.
Support.
Sonny?
I will not support this motion in that I believe we've already made an investment of equipment and time to operate a program. I'm willing to have a discussion with the American Legion, but I'm not going to start by abolishing this program, because I really absolutely firmly believe that the American Legion is not prepared today to operate a program in the spring of 2012, or 2011.
I also am, more than willing to have a discussion and find out, because we don't, I think at this point, even know what the interests of the American Legion are, as to whether they're ready or willing to do this program. I do think we need to have the discussion. I'm not ready to say we're going to abandon the program here and today.
The discussions that I've had with at least with Mark are, if they were to run the program, they would have to go hire someone to operate it for them, because they do not have personnel within their organization able and available to run it.
Jason, I understand where you're coming from and your level of interest and excitement to address this issue, and how passionate you are, and I am equally as passionate, because I did support the American Legion and did vote to continue to have them do that previously at that vote that Larry Fleece talked about. But my preference is not to put a motion on the floor to abandon our current program until we have something in place that we feel comfortable with. So it's kind of like the motion was kind of like maybe in reverse order. I would just much prefer to have a dialogue with the executive committee, with the Parks and Rec Department and the County Commission regarding what they would be willing to do, and if there were going to be any cost factors involved and how it would go, how the process would work, and then we would make a joint decision, and then if it goes to Parks and Rec and they say no, and we like it and we say yes, then it's just done all in one meeting. I mean, I think there's a benefit to that, and so I'd rather not have a motion, I'd rather not deal with a motion on the floor that just eliminates our involvement, and then go out and try to find someone or some organization to fill that spot. And it's kind of how the motion was kind of proceeded. So,
Rob?
I think there's a bigger issue as leaders in our community we need to look at, and that is, what is the purpose of government? Should we have our tentacles into every little area every time someone says, well, we want this program, or is it our job to fulfill that? Or should we be leaving that to the private sector and to the nonprofit organizations to fill that need based on request? And I think that's the issue we're dealing with here.
Okay. Any further discussion? Larry?
Jason, I thought that your motion would be that we found out what the intent of the American Legion was, had a meeting with them. But the motion that you made, I don't think I could support, because what would we do if the American Legion, for whatever reason, can't take it over? And I was wondering if you consider amending your motion to have staff schedule a meeting as ASAP with Parks and Rec and the American Legion and find out what their intent is.
I'd be willing to amend the motion. The trouble that ultimately this entire situation is because we made a mistake. I mean, the commission made a mistake. It should not have sanctioned the action of of a program that was run successfully and run well for 60-some years. And again, as you said earlier, it is a slap in the face to the vets. And the reason that I use the words abandon is because we must, when we make mistakes, sometimes our mistakes have consequences. And without consequences, sometimes we don't learn our lessons. And, I understand that, there may be a bigger picture of whether or not there may be a baseball season in 2011. But we have time. We need to clear the slate and let there be something established if somebody wants to establish something. If we go on and we go on another week and then we go on another week, and we're moving farther into the ability to plan for a season as well. This also, as I said, gives a little bit of leverage to the American Legion for negotiating with the Parks Board as far as using the facilities again. And the Parks Board, I think, would be behooved to try to rent those spaces to a youth baseball program that would be operated on it. I think that's the least we can do for the Legion. And that's my position there. If necessary, I will amend the motion, and I would consider your counsel on that, Commissioner Fleece. But I think it would be.
Jason, if you're going to amend the motion, do it, because I'm about to call the vote, because, I think we're all pretty set on why we're going to do this, so let's, so either change the motion.
Let's call the vote. I'd like to call the vote.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Fleece?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Do you understand? Can we repeat the motion, please?
Moved by Gilman, seconded by Lemko, to abandon the county-run baseball program and encourage the American Legion to run the program. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Wheelock?
No.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
No.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
And Chairman Richardson?
No.
Pass.
Passes
All right.
5-3.
Just so the record reflects, I do support the American Legion. I think it would just been proper to have a meeting first with them before we instituted the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I will be excused if I could.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out, too, that depending on how long it may take the American Legion, I just want the board to be aware, depending on how long it may take the American Legion to make a decision or to establish the program, I don't think it's practical to, depending on the timing of that, to come back to the county later, if you choose, and ask the Parks Board to try to put a program together at last minute. I think that's important for you to realize.
Oh, that's what happened last year.
Mhm.
I mean, we were having the same discussion in late March, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
I think the real crux of this is whether we should be doing, I think what we're talking about here is what Commissioner Henschel said, whether we should be doing these programs at all or not. And so my interpretation of what I'm hearing here is if American Legion doesn't do this, we're not going to have a baseball program in 2011. That's what I'm hearing.
That's what the motion is.
Yep. Okay.
Could I make a statement
It
real
could be
quick?
Little League could pick it up, too.
Yes.
Well, we're not going to pick it up.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
So you
honestly,
understand
we're
I want to make just a quick statement to Mr. Jones. I think he does a tenacious job of running his department, and I would encourage him to take the time and energy he now is available into marketing the parks so people know, because we had a discussion a few minutes ago,
Amen.
that we don't know what parks are available, and I've told him personally, I don't know where the parks are, what the rules are, and what the uses are, and I would really encourage you to redirect your energies in that direction, because I think there's a lot left untapped as far as marketing to the community.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, certainly.
And that's something that the Parks and Recreation Commission has identified as being one of their key goals in 2011, is better planning for our entire department. You talked earlier in regards to the how well we serve South County, and that's something that our Parks and Recreation departments moved forward somewhat independently with a very limited to no strategic plan, and that's something that our Parks and Recreation Commission's identified as being important with the approval of their strategic plan last October, moving into 2011, and that's certainly something we can look into, and it is a strategic priority of the Parks and Rec Commission. The other thing I wanted to comment on, it's unrelated, but earlier you talked about wanting to know more about Parks and Recreation authorities. I wanted to remind this commission, especially our new commissioners, that on February 10th, out at Grand Traverse Resort at 8:30 in the morning, there will be a session being taught about Parks and Recreation authorities. We'll be discussing heavily the Parks and Recreation Authority enabling legislation and the impact that would have on taxing, on what government entities are a part of the Parks and Recreation Authority. So if you're going to continue discussing Parks and Recreation Authority with Civic Center South, this may be a great opportunity for you guys to learn firsthand from a few Parks and Recreation authorities as well as the LIAA in regards to this issue.
What's the time on that again, Jason?
I want to say it's 8:30 in the morning, and there is a special rate for our local commissioners that would like to attend that session, and there's a session following that is associated with that, and our commissioners can attend for $50 for the day for those two sessions.
Could we have a thing sent out to us by email to let us know about this and what the registration is?
Not a problem.
Yeah, that'd be excellent, thank you.
Okay.
And I would encourage people from Civic Center South to attend.
Right, that's why I want the information, I'll
right.
certainly get it to them.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, any new business? Opportunity now for public comment. Any public comment? Okay, now we have Commissioner Committee reports. Anyone have anything?
Thank you.
I have one small thing. The ad hoc committee to discuss evening meetings for the county commission met yesterday. We did pass on a split vote a motion to have our meetings every Wednesday night. The vote was 2-1. Commissioner Wheelock and I voted for it. Commissioner Hensel voted against it. My original motion when we established the committee was to bring the recommendation back to the February 9th RMA meeting, and that is what I'm still planning on doing. And the reason is that I want to have some time to discuss with the city whether they're willing to move the planning commission, which meets every 2 Wednesdays a night. I want to discuss with them if they're willing to move it, and if they are, have that part of the recommendation that gets brought back a month from now. And then we can discuss whether the evening meetings are a good idea for the whole county commission or not. So, any other committee reports? Any notices and or announcements? Yes.
As you know, Katie and I have attempted to send out several mail notifications on availability for commissioner schedules for the 2011 work plan session for the county commission. We've checked the schedule here in this room in terms of evening availability and for January and February, remaining part of January and February, and tried to match those up with commissioner schedules. We're unsuccessful to do that either during the day and or an evening meeting. So it is not, in the past we have had a Saturday, I'm just throwing this out, we have had a Saturday session regarding strategic planning and work plan sessions in the past, and I'm just wondering if commissioners would consider having perhaps an 8 to noon or a 9 to noon meeting here in the chambers on a Saturday morning to complete that task sometime in January or sometime in February.
How's the 22nd look?
Of January? That's fine with me. Yeah.
Larry, is it the availability of this room?
A combination of the availability of this room and to be taped and commissioner schedules.
Pretty much good with whatever.
Well, it doesn't thrill me, but if that's all that works. You think it does need to be taped, though? It does need to be in this room?
Well, we were hoping to have it video, recorded.
That way it can be recorded.
Yeah. So I'm open to having a Saturday morning session.
Yep.
That'd be fine with me.
Friday evenings didn't work?
Not for most folks, no. No, when we set the Friday day out, it didn't work for anybody, so. We didn't dive into the Friday evening.
You want to make it
situation.
Saturday, the 22nd at 9 a.m.?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that would be fine with me.
Does that work for the staff?
We'll make it work.
Okay.
All right.
Saturday, 9 a.m., the 22nd.
Okay, anything else on notices or announcements? And now we need I'm sorry, go ahead.
I guess I have a follow-up question, if I might. Given the preliminary recommendation coming to the board, the full board at the end of the month regarding the motion to abandon staff-orientated baseball program and to ask the American Legion if they would like to take over, and if they don't take over, then we don't have a program. How we should approach the message to the American Legion after leaving this meeting. Should we just call Mark Greiner and indicate to contact the Parks and Rec Department and discuss with them their interest in taking over the program? Is that the proper next step?
Of course, the action isn't official till the end of the month, but I think
Correct.
we should give them as much leeway as we can. So I think it's appropriate to say the committee took this action, and in all likelihood, it'll be supported by the board, and you should
Get your
be in contact with the Parks Department to make appropriate arrangements.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I talked to them a little bit myself, and basically I told them, come up with a list of what you need to put it together this year, and then decide at your e-board meeting whether you're going to do it. And so they will have a list of what they need to make it happen this year, and we should encourage the parks to accommodate them any way they can.
Yeah, so hopefully, it would be good, it would be my preference, as just a sitting commissioner.
You should be the contact.
Yeah, I'll get a hold of Mark. It'd be my preference if they can have a discussion. When does Parks and Rec meet, Dennis?
I can check for you here. I think they meet this coming Thursday.
All right. It'd be my preference if we can get the executive officers of the American Legion to attend that meeting, get them on the agenda somehow. And so when this does come to the board meeting, we would know if they are available to take over the program and under what type of structure and agreement. And so there could be, that would be helpful in terms of a unified direction at our board meeting to
Well,
ratify what's going on.
If I could, I don't think it's practical to expect them to be able to come into a Parks meeting, which is on the 20th, and negotiate some kind of a contract. And it's inappropriate, actually.
Well, I think they know what they want. It's just a matter of whether they're.
I'm not sure they know what they want yet. I think they're putting together
part of the
their
issue.
list. I think what's appropriate is for them to approach Jason Jones and to, put their proposal together. What we were told on the phone was, basically, if they're going to run it, they want to run the whole program, and all they want from us is we'll charge them rent like we would any other vendor.
Just like that.
And so I think our work on this is very minimal, other than if they make a request for the equipment, which, we really have no use for the
of
equipment
course,
at this
yeah.
point in time.
Right.
So that has to be worked out. And my thinking is this is my thinking. My thinking is the importance of having baseball for children in this community outweighs any other considerations. And if we can give them the equipment, we give them the equipment with maybe a 5-year agreement or something that they'll use our fields to run baseball programs. The one caveat in that is I think they still owe us some money from last year that we never worked out with the equipment. So, just off the top of my head, I would say all things forgiven. Here's the equipment, sign a 5-year agreement, you're going to run baseball programs, and here's the cost.
Yep.
Would it be good for us to make a motion to that effect to make sure that happens? I just don't want
I
to
don't-
get caught up in the
I think we're-
bureaucracy.
I think we already have.
Let's find out what we need to do for our meeting on the last Wednesday of the month.
Yeah.
And we can
Yeah.
make that decision.
I seriously don't think this is going to be an issue.
Next week.
I seriously don't think this will be an issue that'll get caught up in bureaucracy. It gets caught up in board policy, so I think,
That's what I mean.
yeah,
The Parks
I
Board,
think we know clearly what you're looking for, and we can deliver that.
Yep.
All right.
Just for your information, the injection well in Mayfield Township, which the EPA and them held a public hearing last April, I believe it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Still no decision. And I think what may be delaying it is the EPA violated all their administrative rules. Very few people received notice, and they had scheduled it for the new commissioners, the meeting to be in Williamsburg. When we're talking Mayfield Township here, the well that's in question is actually just about 250, 300 feet south of 113 on M37 on the west side of the road. But I was at Mayfield Monday night, and they still haven't heard a peep from the state and or the EPA. So they're just waiting, and that they wanted to change there'd been a petition to change the classification from a Class 2 to a Class 1, where they could literally take anything and
They're just pumping pollutants
Yeah.
into the ground?
right now, see,
want that next door
they're not
to your house?
allowed to. It's a Class 2. They can pump like brine, but that's known as cancer corners. Within a 1 mile radius, there's been just, in fact, if you go to Munson, the oncology unit, and somebody from out there, oh yeah, you live in cancer corners. It's, there's been like 11 or 13 people.
Is that something that, is any of what is being pumped into the ground there, is that anything?
not yet.
It's not treatable?
It's not being pumped.
Well, yeah, it's brine. It's brine, but see, you want to hear a real Lulu? I asked a question at this public hearing. I said, what's your testing procedure? Well, we test it once a year. I said, how do you accomplish this test? Well, what we do is we contact the person or the company doing the injecting. We have them draw a sample. They take it to their lab, a lab of their choice, and they send us the results. I says, where's the integrity of the testing? See, but that's exactly what's been going on with the state and the EPA.
Do we have geological studies that show this well? Is this what we're waiting for from the EPA? or-
No, we're just waiting for them, for their decision to whether they're going to allow Class 1 instead of Class 2. See, and of course, Mayfield's, has the environmentalists. They've hired an environmental firm, and there's been a lot of help there on Mayfield's, but they certainly don't want a Class 1 there. But anyway, the surprising part is, here it's been, and initially at the meeting, they said probably 6 months they'd have a decision, and here it's been almost a year.
What goes in there could go through our septic plant.
That was what I was getting to.
It could.
Yeah, it could.
Why wouldn't we encourage
We
that?
have
Well, we
been.
do,
have.
but it's cheaper.
Okay.
The well is cheaper, so they
Much
want to use the
cheaper.
well.
Same thing the same situation we had up at Bay Harbor.
Right.
They were bringing it here, but the transportation costs were such that it was much cheaper. They own an injection well, they're injecting it.
The difference
And
is
it's
that water
closer.
you could drink. It's got a little metal in it, that's all.
Okay, I guess we still need a closed session, is that
Yes, we do.
correct? Okay, could I have a motion, please?
Oh, I'd be
Motion
glad to
to
make this.
go into closed session for corrections officers negotiation.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Wheelock is absent.
Gone.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yes. What?
Commissioner Gilman?
On the motion is yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Thomas?
If I vote no, can I go home?
Still not feeling good, huh?
Oh, God.
Please?
Yes.
And Chairman Richardson.
Yes.
Okay, and we're going to be in the back room here, we'll be back there, hopefully it'll be short, and there'll be no action at the result of that. Commissioner Inman, Carol needs some signatures before.
Okay.
Good.
And then, please?
Lawyers speak.
Good start.
Yeah.
One was brought in.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
I'd make the motion. to come
Motion
out
by
of closed
Fleece,
session.
second by,
I'll make it a second.
okay, Gilman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion to adjourn meeting?
Okay, motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Say goodbye, Dickie.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Done. Thank you.